Yep, sounds good to me. And you know what Tom's like? He does not stop talking about his favourite records.
Oh no, we've been put into another tier. We were from tier 1 to tier 3 now.
And I suppose the good thing about doing it over Zoom is I only have to worry about what I'm wearing on my top half.
Oh wait, we're now in tier 3.7. That doesn't make any sense. Oh wait, no, back into tier 2 again. No, oh, tier 4. Oh, Taylor Swift has another album out.
Tom, are you listening?
Yeah, Matt, we'll be fine. We'll have a great album chat, talk about our favorite music of the year. It'll be great context. And now we're on tier 2 on Wednesdays and tier 3 on weekends.
Mate, it doesn't matter what tier we're in, it sucks either way. So I was thinking maybe we could talk about the 1975, Ariana Grande, Stormzy, maybe even Fontaines DC.
Okay, make sure I look good. I can't believe Matt Horton's got so many big names. That Zoom call was unbelievable. He said, Lady Gaga, I hope she's still single, 1975, Stormzy, Fontaines DC. Got to make sure I look good for these people. And the award for Miss Lady Gaga, got to impress and warm her over.
Tom, why are you all dressed up, mate?
You said in the Zoom call the other week that you were going to get Lady Gaga, 1975, Stormzy, Fontaines.
Mate, I said we'd be talking about them, not that they'd jump onto our chat.
All right, so we are on Zoom because of unfortunate circumstances and the climate of the world. We've had to go all 2020 on this, and instead of recording in a great cool record shop in Brentwood, hey Joe, we're on Zoom for our end of year chat. I'm with Matt Horton. How are you, man?
Hello, I'm good, man. Thanks for having me. This is exciting.
It's really exciting. It's really good to finally chat properly about the music that we have shared over the course of the year, instead of a little fleeting moment, which I'm obviously forever grateful for the opportunity. Matt Horton's music show.
I just wonder how many people you've just broken the illusion to that you're not actually there in the studio when we chat.
That's true. I think some people may have a theory that you just keep me in a little cave and just let me out do that couple of minutes.
And that's it. Literally doesn't say anything else. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, that's the whole thing. Yeah, like we said, we've gone full on 2020 with the Zoom call to discuss about our favorite albums of the year and other bits and pieces within music of this year. Obviously minus the reality of life, music alone. How have you felt 2020 been for music, despite all the tragedies and heartaches?
It's been really good, I think. I feel like, especially the latter part of the year, because a lot of artists, I feel, spent a lot of time when they were isolating, being creative, because that's how they got through, their quarantine time. So in that sense, I think it's been really, really good. Obviously, no live shows, no festivals, no clubs, etc. But for music, in terms of new music, recorded music, I think it's been really, really good. I think also it's kind of been a bit of a eye-opener to a lot of people about what matters to them, like musicians wise, and I think that's kind of reflected in the music they've sung about and the music they've made. And I mean, I for one, there's definitely been some fantastic dance music this year. I feel like, taking nothing away from DJs and producers, but the way dance music is produced, I feel, is easier in this environment. Not saying it's easy to produce, but easier in this environment than maybe a full band, etc. I know, for instance, when Power Waves were recording their new record, they were saying they were all having to sit there, in the studio in different rooms with gloves and masks on. So at least some people, different types of music don't have that issue. But no, pretty decent. What about you?
Yeah, I definitely think so. There's been a lot of records that I've enjoyed, a lot of singles, and I think it probably means a lot more because of the way of the world at the moment. And it's been fascinating. I definitely think there's some heroes that have come out of this year with their music, which has been fun. And yeah, definitely some tunes that really go up against 2019, 2018, which is always awesome to hear, and especially with new music as well, because obviously we both look at new music it's quite exciting to see what 2021 is going to happen with certain people, which is really exciting. And hopefully by the time it's the summer, we're able to enjoy it in the way that we normally do. So trust on that.
I'd say as well, I'm really impressed about how, especially like unsigned bands which aren't, don't have a big following, how they've still been like motivated. All the bands I've spoken to this year, a lot of the time I've said to them, how have you maintained that motivation? Because most of them still have to like work a 9-to-5 job or work a job aside from that, but they're putting out new music, they're trying to plug themselves, and hats off to them, because that must be really, really hard, especially when a lot of your fan base and that is picked up through like playing live shows and stuff, which is taken away from them. So hats off to like up and coming artists for sticking at it, because I mean, hopefully there won't be some sort of like backlog in like a few years time, because like there weren't so many artists. But we'll see.
We'll definitely see. I second that, and I think fingers crossed that they can finally push on, because they all, in normal circumstances, they would deserve the success, but even more so, like you say, all the bands that have pushed through this year to keep on going. I wish them all the best, all of them, because they all deserve that break, don't they?
Mm-hmm. So I thought it would be, obviously we're going to chat about 3 records in a bit more detail, but maybe just a bit of a general, what's kind of surprised you this year, what have you enjoyed this year, some general highlights. Tom, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, definitely. Like, obviously I'm going to make myself cry and think about January and February time. But experiencing the 1975 live again at the O2 Arena really stood out for me, and hearing some of their newer tracks that we were going to hear on Notes, that was a great highlight. Obviously, experiencing their music with good friends was awesome. The Surgeons of Rina Sawayama, Baby Queen, those 2 really stood out of like new artists that are really showing off what they're able to do. And what else? And obviously the return of Royal Blood as well. Absolutely love that. That was a good highlight. I was in the car with a friend driving at night, hearing Troubles Coming for the first time, and it was so suited. They're probably the few things that come to mind. And then Taylor Swift becoming even more of a legend with the 2 records.
Definitely, that was two of my highlights. Certainly are things you've said. Baby Queen, I think, has been an outstanding new artist this year. Just everything she stands for, everything she sings about. She's just such a lovable person. I was very lucky to chat to her, and she just is amazing. And has such like an energy that you can't just help but smile like around and feel happy around as well. As you say, Taylor Swift. I'm not the biggest Swiftie fan. Hold my hands up. However, this record was sensational. Did not see it coming from a mile off, and of course putting out the sister record very recently as well, just further consolidated that. As I alluded to as well, huge year for dance music, I think. So many good dance tunes. Obviously Joel Corey, MNEK practically owning the summer with Head and Heart. Frankie Wah, Come Together, that is just a huge record. I feel like that record is gonna go down in history. That is huge. What else? Huge year, I think, for kind of British hip hop, rap, trap, drill music, with Heady One having a #1 record, and people like Dutchavelli and Tion Wayne coming to the forefront as well, which is good to see, even if they are beefing each other. Arlo Parks. Where can I start on Arlo Parks? She is just it. She is an artist. She is an artist. I've said a few times on my show, the kind of way her tracks, the way she writes songs and her melodies hit you in a way that only a few songwriters can also achieve. And those songwriters are people like Chris Martin, Tom York. Like, honestly, I think she is up there with that sort of caliber of songwriter. So her record coming out next year, can't wait for that. Fontaines DC as well, Song of the Year as on Bring the Music. Well. Pardon?
Especially them going to #1, getting the Grammy nods, like that was so good.
I think people underestimate how hard it is for a rock and roll band to stay that relevant. And I'm not talking rock and roll like the 1975, because they're not, as much as I adore them, they are not pure rock and roll. But band like Fontaines DC, just pure unadulterated rock and roll, #1. It's great to see.
for me, that's when the charts really matter most. Like coming back to my mention of Troubles Coming, charting really high up for a rock and roll band. I was looking through and looking at Arctic Monkeys and Foals and looking at their chart history in the last couple of years. And, you know, we all know rock music struggles in the charts, and even more so now. And yeah, so that was quite a big feat. And then Blossoms at the start of the year beating a ex One Direction member to number one. I thought that was that was a good moment.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
So we've got our 3 albums that we picked. I'm just going to say the 3 albums that I picked aren't Bring Me the Music's top 3 albums. I've gone for ones that I've just enjoyed the most and the ones that I go back to. You know, there's albums that I appreciate and do enjoy, but not continuously listen to. Only one is probably in the top 3.
Okay.
My picks. Just want to put that out there because we're going to question like, oh, but that doesn't match with what you put on the page. Whoa, calm down, guys.
Yeah. No, it's good to talk about as many different things as possible. So yeah, you want to kind of talk about other records that you might not be mentioning in other places.
Definitely, so. Yeah. How was it like picking those 3 records for you? Did you find it hard?
One was the easiest choice. As soon as you came up with this idea and the notion of picking 3 records, one was like, yes, definitely. Yeah. I feel like the struggle was kind of picking. I always find a record versus like an artist. So, for instance, there are artists that I may have enjoyed more, Youngblood, this year. However, as a collection of like music and as a record, as an album, I feel like there are stronger records this year that have been released this year as a collective, if you see what I mean. So kind of balancing that up was kind of hard.
Yeah, I think there's just things that just go towards more your natural taste that may not be, like you say, the quality isn't as good as said A person, said B person, but it just gets to what you just purely enjoy from music. And I think one of my picks is definitely one of those. And you probably know which one that one is. So with no further ado, I'm gonna offer you to go first with
okay. All right.
Choosing an album for us to discuss. So it doesn't have to be the 3rd favorite one. It can just be any of them, I think.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually gonna start in chronological order.
Okay.
And I'm gonna take you back to January. Now, January seems like a literally lifetime away. I've never ever meant that sentence like more.
It's nuts, isn't it?
But a producer called Mura Masa released his 2nd record, and what I was saying, like I was just saying about as a collection, as a record, as a like 10 or 12 tracks, you know, I think this record is outstanding. It's called Raw Youth Collage or Collage. So what I love mainly about this record as well is how it encapsulates all sides of teenage life and the young people's lives nowadays, from the sort of anxiety side of life and people not knowing where they fit in, not knowing about their future, having to navigate social media and things like that. But it also touches on sort of the rebellious and carefree side of young people nowadays, of, you know, just kind of doing what they want, not thinking about their actions. And it is really a nice blend of the two. The guests are incredible. He's got Clairo on it. Yeah. He's got Georgia, who is an outstanding artist. Wolf Alice or Ellie Rousel from Wolf Alice. Slow Tie, which is of course on the record about kind of being a bit rebellious. And I think it just kind of sits so well with a lot of people. And it kind of, the fact it came out in January was actually really, really fitting for me. And it kind of felt quite personal in a way, because this at that time of the year, I wasn't fully aware of where I was going to be because of work. My contract wasn't certain for the year. Of course, this is well before coronavirus was a thing. So I was kind of, after having a pretty like decent year and some really cool experiences in 2019, I was at the start of 2020 thinking like, oh, you know, what do I do next? Where do I go? And this kind of soundtracked that sort of first few weeks of anxiety, I guess, of a new
Yeah.
year, but a bit excitement as well. And, and it
Mm.
kind of is that emotional spectrum of all over the place. You have those moments of being like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do. And then others like, yeah, I can do anything, and
Yeah.
that's what this record really feels like.
Mm.
The second record that is kind of starts off with a bit of a spoken word. And then the first actual song is kind of reminiscent of Blink 182's Enemies of the Sleep, that sort
Mm.
of pop punky hard sort of sound. And actually Mura Masa said about this record, he said how it kind of blends everything that he grew up with. So like that sort of pop punky sound, but then also like French house music and pop music and a little bit of hip hop in there. And it's
Yeah.
literally all thrown in, and you can hear all these influences. And as a
Yeah.
collection, as a set of, I think it's like 10 tracks, it's
Mm.
outstanding. I think it's great.
I was going to ask you about, it does feel like a bit of a shift from the debut record. Did that take you by surprise?
Um, I guess so. I didn't really know what to expect, to be honest.
Mm.
I felt like with the first record they were great songs, but not a collective.
Yeah.
Like the ones with like Charlie XCX and ASAP Rocky and like Fireflies and stuff. They were great tunes, and I was lucky to see him at Reading last year. And when he played them, they went off.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I felt like as a record, like I loved listening to this from start to finish,
Yeah.
and the kind of things it touched upon had sort of a theme running throughout.
Mm.
So I wasn't kind of anticipating that. I was anticipating another set of like bangers. But
Yes.
he's kind of done both in a way. I feel like it's bangers with a running theme.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I definitely like you talk about the features, and there is a definite contrast from the features from that first record to now, and I think it probably just suits him a lot better having, not just fellow British people featuring on,
Mm,
but a bit more fresher faces and less names that could kind of deter you away from him. I think
mm.
a lot of people end up focusing on Charlie XCX,
Yeah,
etc. I think
exactly. Yeah,
he shines a lot better this time around with the features that he's chosen,
yeah.
which I think a good move.
Yeah, definitely. Which is kind of great as well. You'd think it'd be the other way around, you'd go with the sort of more upcoming artists, record one, record two, then
Mm.
you get the big
Yeah,
names. But
yeah.
yeah, it's crazy. So do you want to tell us what's your first choice?
My first choice, I'm going to go with an album which won't be up there in terms of quality, but in terms of just attracting my things that I enjoy about music and the essence of it so much is "Foolish Loving Spaces" by Blossoms. Their third record, which I was really curious to see where they would go next. After the big hit of Charlemagne on the debut record, the more synth heavy sound, it was not getting repetitive, but you were left thinking, what are they going to do differently next time? Is it just going to be the same thing and get stuck in that? But I feel like with Foolish Loving Spaces, which originally it was going to be 3 separate EPs, Foolish Loving Spaces, but luckily they put it all together as one, into this kind of mixture of 80s, indie as well, soundtrack of just loving and just sense of wholesomeness and purity, with some Talking Heads, Fleetwood Mac, I think a bit Paul McCartney as well, and just the focus of all guys going at it perfectly. I think every member is on form. Tom Odgen, the frontman's melody and lyrics, lovely, very catchy, very accessible, but still intriguing and interesting from a songwriting aspect. Charlie Salt on bass and backing vocals. I think Charlie Salt's probably one of the best bass players around in the whole world. He really
Bold
shines.
statement.
Bold statement. I would say that to his face, and probably give him a hug.
I wouldn't say that to Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers face, but
Yeah, dunk, 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 dunk. Yeah, we've heard it, mate. And then Joe with the percussion ideas behind this record, I think allows the album to feel a lot differently. And then Mars with his synth touches, and then Josh on lead guitar, very playful nature. There's some fantastic songs on it. Obviously the big singles like Your Girlfriend, very Talking Heads. I love the little moments of little synth and little chuggy guitar that you hear deep within the mix. I think that just enhances the song even more. My Swimming Brain really reminds me of Fleetwood Mac. Great melody, very catchy. Your Girlfriend's really infectious. And yeah, I just think it's just pure songwriting that just feels happy and jolly and catchy, but still not feeling simple, which I think is really awesome.
Something that kind of interests me about this, I'm not the biggest fan of Blossoms. I think they are great, but I don't know. There's I just haven't been able to kind of get into them as much as a lot of other people. But what I
Mm.
find really interesting and what I'd like to know, if this was their first record and this was their like their debut and they were a new name, would you think you like the record as much as you do, or is it only kind of because it's so different and they have sort of ventured new ways as opposed to the other record that you kind of think, yeah, this is still really good?
That's an interesting question. I think it would still pique my interest with hearing the ideas, the ambition, the focus on like I don't want to say traditional songwriting because songwriting's so vague and it doesn't need to be that certain way that some people think. But that focus of just a bunch of people just writing together and I think it would, but I think because it doesn't have not every artist will again and again have the same kind of hit as Charlemagne was. I do think potentially that if it was their debut record, their path would be very different. I think without Charlemagne, I think loads of artists will say that about their early hits. It was needed, but then with Blossoms themselves, I discovered them. I was at Tea in the Park and I went to my friends, does anybody want to come see this Manchester band? They're on at like 11 a.m. And we all fell in love with them and we've all bonded around them. And there's that, like you talked about how there's an emotional connection to a time with an album. Blossoms as a whole really reminds me of a certain time of going to loads of gigs a lot for the first time and things like that. But yeah, I do think I think to answer your question, their path would be very different, but I think it would still intrigue me and I would really enjoy this record because it just ticks a load of boxes of stuff that I enjoy personally.
And where would you like them to go next?
It's a good point. It would be interesting. They're talking about releasing another record and they've been recording stuff. And, I was hoping, after Cool Like You for them to not focus so much on the synths, even though it was still a solid record and there were still songs you could chant to and sing along to and can still be one good thing about Blossoms that you've got the Dark Fruits Twitter chanting along in their Adidas gear. You got the catchiness for a younger audience, but then a sense of songwriting class that older generations will enjoy. So this time around, I'm up for anything. I'm curious. If it's to a certain standard, then I'll be happy. I think after a while, when they get into a groove and do different things, I'm a bit calmer with, I think they should go here or should go there. Yeah.
Nice.
What do you think about your pick? Where do you think album 3 will be?
Don't know.
It's hard. It's hard to
no idea.
Especially with how varied an artist like that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I kind of don't want to speculate. And I don't want to say I'm not, as much as I adore music and I listen to it every day. I'm not a musician, and I'm so glad I'm not, because I love to be surprised. I love to listen to records and like, how do they come up with that? How did they come up with this sound? I like to be surprised by that. If I knew, if I could pick and choose and think, that would be best if they do that. It's like so the argument kind of at the moment is the Arctic Monkeys. Are they going to carry on down the Tranquility Base Road?
Yeah.
We'll go back. Who's to say, who's to dictate that? And the anticipation kind of keeps me going. It's always kept me going. Yeah,
definitely. It'd be exciting about how Arctic Monkeys go next. So what was your second pick?
Okay, second pick. And I touched on this at the start about how it's been such a big year for like UK rap and grime and drill and trap. Heady One had a big number one album, as I said. People like Dutch Valley, Lowski, Tion Wayne. So a lot of great artists coming out of the UK as well. But the best for me is a guy called Salieu. I just feel like, because, and this is something he talks about as well, being from Coventry, he's almost not given, of course, people who have grown up in deprived areas in South London, East London, have had
Yeah.
incredibly tough lives. You know, I'm not here to sit and judge that, but he talks about how living and growing up in Coventry, you're even more, you know, in the shadows and even more put to the side and ostracized, because Coventry just kind of is this place that doesn't really exist. There's no opportunities there. It's not seen as London, you know, and it's kind of like a lot of rappers, when you hear them talk about, they're proud of where they come from. You know, I'm South London, like Stormzy's very, you know, I'm hashtag murky, hashtag South London.
Yeah.
You know, which is great to be proud where you come from. But Pusley's like, there's no one that says, you know, I'm from Coventry.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
it's so the mixtape is it's not a record. It's not an album. It's a mixtape. I did ask an artist once what's the difference, and he said he doesn't know. So I'm just gonna I'm just gonna
Very good
it's the
point.
same to me.
Yeah.
But it's called Send Them to Coventry, the name of the record. And the reason it's called that is because the saying Send Them to Coventry was something that used to be kind of thrown around when people, I think it was like used when people were like coming out of prison and stuff like that, or where should we put people, where should we rehouse them? Oh, Send Them to Coventry. You know, it was just this area of land that no one really cared about and no one really thought of. But he's like, hang on a minute, there's real people here, real lives. And also what was really interesting is he spent the most of his childhood in Gambia. So he's born in Gambia and raised in Coventry. And he speaks on the record about a lot of sort of issues with that, and how he would be like receive racist and discriminative abuse and be bullied because of the way he talks, the way he looks.
Yeah.
But as a record, as a collection of, I think there's 16 tracks, so it's quite long. It is just phenomenal. So he kind of had his first single that he released was a track called Frontline, which has this dirty sort of, I don't even know what it is, sound kind of running throughout, which is, I think, kind of, it was our kind of first introduction to him, and it was really hardcore and quite hard hitting. But all of his tracks have got this swagger and this sway about them.
I was going to say it's so headstrong, this record. I absolutely lived for how headstrong, confident, and bold it all was. It was
and for something like that, I mean, I know, like talking about Mura Masa, I'm saying about how, you know, it's great to hear songs about anxiety and not knowing, but at the same time, it's also great to hear such, like you say, headstrong records that are kind of powerful. And I sit and I walk along the road, and listen to a track like My Family on that record, which he did Bank Road G, and you just feel like you could take on the world, you know.
Yeah, definitely. There's so much great energy on that, isn't there?
Exactly. And I think as well, what is great is the sentiment of the record is great. He talks a lot about how he has kind of chosen the right path of, you know, trying to follow his music and trying not to get in trouble, despite the fact he is surrounded by drugs, guns, crime, etc. And I think that's what a lot of people would hear, you know, the tracks and just think, oh, it's another bloke talking about guns and violence. Like, it's really not. It really takes you to kind of listen to the lyrics and look into it to know that he is talking about something very real, something that is going on, but kind of turning it into a positive sort of outlet. So the first track is called Block Boy, which is this big, bold statement of, you know, I grew up on the block, and it's like, like rise up your Glock. It's about guns. And it's kind of a real impactful, like, welcome to Coventry, you know, like you're here. But then throughout it has this
in the mix.
Say that again, sorry.
You stripped it all down. I think there's a slight Caribbean vibe to it.
Yes, definitely. So as well, he talks about how his heritage influences music. So when I say about this swagger and this sway, he likes to fit his kind of African roots into his music. And a song that does that really well is a song with Back Road G called My Family, which first listen sounds like really kind of in your ears, hardcore. But it is talking about being proud of your heritage and where you're from and the people, you know, that raised you, your family. And in that track, he wanted to keep a lot of sort of African influence in it. A lot of people have drawn comparisons between him and Jay Huss for that reason, which I think is great.
Yeah.
Quite similar there. And then there's a record called Black as well, which is a bit more of a kind of a social commentary on racism and how people kind of fear the black culture, as he says it. You know, that's something he feels he experiences a lot of. But my favorite record on the album is actually the last song, and it is so different to the rest. It is a blissful, calming. It's
very reflective, isn't it?
Very, very reflective, and it's a track with Mahalia, who has like an angelic voice. She is a superstar, and yeah, it is just, and it's called Energy, and it is about it, like the lyrics said, don't let anyone stamp on your energy. You know, like don't let anyone stop you doing what you want to do. They just want you to fall because their jealousy. Protect your energy. You know, just carry on. And I think especially in times like this, it's something that can really, really kind of motivate a lot of people. And I think it's the perfect way to end the record, because it kind of sums up the whole sentiment that runs throughout it. Although it might not be obvious to like the ear, and people, as I said, like just think it's another, you know, rap album about guns and violence. There is this running theme of positivity and help, like and helplessness as well from him, but also wanting to help others and inspire others running throughout. And I think the rounding off of the track Energy just is perfect.
Yeah, I fully agree with you with that last track. I feel like No Warning was a song that stood out to me because it felt very street, but then there was that dance hall vibe, and it really changed closer to the end. I was going to ask you, you know, for you with grime records, hip hop records, are you a fan, or does it just depend on the quality of one that's just full straight on a certain way? If it is going to be, let's say, a full on like typical grime, just going headstrong into that, or one that offers like the artist's influences from his heritage, the Afro beats, dancehall, Caribbean music, and things like that. For you, do you always feel like there needs to be a balance, or you're not that fussed?
That's a good question. I mean, for me, I don't listen to like grime and rap records all the time. Like a lot of the time I will always listen to them, but probably if they don't kind of stick with me and if they don't stand out to me, then I will only listen to them kind of that once. And but there's not necessarily a reason why that's the case. Sometimes I guess I feel I mean, being someone who's grown up in a very privileged area, and you know, you don't feel like you can relate to a lot of what people are talking about, you know, and therefore maybe that doesn't quite sit with you. But it's obviously important to kind of open your ears up and listen to what other people say. But musically, I don't know. I do like the fact that he has that African influence on the record, and then that more traditional hip hop, and then the kind of soulful, and then even like there's a couple of tracks which even almost have like an 80s sort of synthy vibe to them.
More paper. That was
that
I heard that and I thought
could be in Stranger Things
on record.
Yeah, it's so strange, but it's great. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. I think
it does.
I just think it depends. Yeah,
it's hard, especially with let's say if it is a genre that you don't listen to all the time. I think it's a bit harder to pick up those things that the ins and outs of things that you like about it and what catches things a lot harder. That's one thing that I want to work harder on, is genres that I don't listen to as much, but still be able to go, I like that genre when this is happening, or they do that with it. That's one thing I feel like it could be a New Year's resolution, is to
definitely
more street smart with other genres, and really be able to turn around and go, oh, but I like it when it's a bit like this, despite not an avid fan of whatever.
What's your number two then? What's your number two record on the list?
Is I'm going to go with the debut record by the Japanese and British artist Rina Sawayama, called Sawayama, and it was, leading up to it, I was really curious to see where it was going to go. She arrived with an EP that was very R&B, but this still has those moments. But for me, the best way to describe it is this like avant-garde pop record with like new metal influences, which I think you can probably say the same thing, stunned everyone. Like everyone just fell to the floor, just like, what the hell is happening? And then I think the biggest part of it is the messages behind it. As I said, she's Japanese and British. She tackles that dual nationality, her heritage, and discussing it, debating about it, questioning it, and then also still being able to celebrate herself as well, and the people around her and in her life, and then also questioning bigger world problems and issues that she feels like's up. And I think that blend just allows anyone to be engaged with at some point, which I think is really good, alongside the catchy pop melodies. You know, at times you feel like Max Martin has written a song on this record. It's that catchy and so infectious, but it's her with a couple of people that she gets along well with, and it opens amazingly with Dynasty. It's so epic, isn't it? It's just it just starts so well, and then it goes into, for me, the big single off it, Excess. If you said Britney Spears could do a cover of it, you'd probably go yes, because it is so catchy. But then again, it has those new metal guitars, and looking at about the materialistic society that we live in, and consumer culture, about how we need more, 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 more. And I think the instrumentation really tackles that as well, with little production tricks and little funny moments, and then the heavy guitars, and just the way it shifts. I'm going to try and pronounce it right. Comédie Garçon, felt I had to go all French with saying it, is a beautiful disco track, which, you know, from what I said with the first opening couple of tracks, going into a disco kind of vibe is great. That tackles about how, and it's never a thing I've thought about. It's really interesting about, you know, if you had to typically say what society sees as confident, they're actually quite toxic traits of, you know, being quite conservative, being very, I'm not going to talk about this, I love me. It's, you know, I'm going into a male impression, which, you know, kind of rolls into a lot of sad things that you find in masculinity that be quite troubling, hence the title. And then a bit of 90s vibes as well that you find, I think at times, is quite Janet Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, for me, it's just, and in it sounds really epic, but has wholesome moments like Tokyo Love Hotel, which looks back about, you know, loads of people dream of going to Japan, going to Tokyo, and things like that. And her looking on tourists and, you're not treating my hometown with the same respect. And I think, for me, you could really broaden that out to so many different things. I think with music taste as well, for an artist you like, or you know, football team that you may like as well, which we could probably resonate with. And then Chosen Family as well, which I thought was a song that seems like has resonated with a lot of people. So, you know, I've gone on so many different ways and different topics and genres, which I think is just incredible to see that a debut record can hold all that and still feel so strong, accessible, impressive. It's a standout, and yeah, it's for me flawless nearly.
I just cannot get over how, like you say, Comme des Garçons is like a big camp sort of club record.
Yeah.
And then like Dynasty could be an Evanescence track. Like
Mm-hmm.
it really could. And yeah, it just kind of, it's a way, it's just the way it balances between that. It manages to go all of these places, but you never kind of feel lost, and it never seems sort of scatty, or it doesn't seem like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. You know, this is, I want to try all these different. It seems to work, and it seems to run through it. Especially, I think with a track like XS that has that pop and new metal element to it. You know, like she might have a pop song and a new metal song on the record, but the fact that she's kind of put them together,
Mm.
you know, I think is incredible. What do you think really sort of draws you? Because this is what I kind of touched on this when I was saying about if you don't feel like you can relate to a record, and a lot of the things she talks about on the record are things that, I mean, like, you're not sort of dual national, and
Mm.
so you don't. Why do you think it still kind of sticks with you and means a lot to you when you, on paper, you know, don't
Yeah.
match up with the topics in the record?
I think she writes in a very interesting, intelligent way, where she does talk about some very personal topics, and you know, some topics that I don't not resonate with, but I haven't gone through that same experiences. I've been very lucky that I've been in a very a family that I felt very connected with, and I haven't had to find a whole new like sense of circle of people around me to feel more accepted. But I resonated with the sense of feeling like you do have purpose, but you're in a place where it can't be fulfilled or people are holding you back. Like I remember experiencing growing up, and I always feel like I've quite a dual personality in a way. Growing up in a school where I was doing good at drama and very good at PE, I had someone that wanted to beat me up for winning a PE award. And any American high school film would tell you that would never happen. If you win that award, you're good from it. So, I've in my own way have experienced a sense of misplacement. And I felt like I did resonate with Rina on this record in the sense of working hard and trying to find a place where your purpose can really feel could really fulfill and be nurtured. And I think with the topics being, like I said, written so well and intelligently, they could spawn out and be touched on into different areas where you could, or one other person could find and be like, no, I resonate with that, or that feeling that fits with what I went through here. So I just think she writes in such a universal way despite writing so personally. I think it's a very impressive balance.
And what was the first track you heard from this record? Because I always find it interesting as well how when you have such diverse albums, so that, for instance, the first track I heard was Comme des Garçons. So when I listened to the record, I was expecting like a poppy, I was kind of in the mood for this pop camp sort of sound, this could sound good in a DJ set sort of thing. And then like opening with Dynasty, and you're like, oh, like, okay. So kind of what is, so was that was the first track you heard? Were you did you go into the record then expecting them all like that, or?
I think I heard two other songs before listening to the record in full. So I kind of knew that some shit was going to go down, because I heard her debut EP and it was very R&B influenced, and then heard the disco-ness and thought, oh, this is interesting. Where's she going to take this? And then I think it could have been Dynasty that I heard. And then, like you say, it's just something totally different. And then I was just like, I have no idea what I'm going to go into with this. I'm just going to put my earphones in and just see where it takes me. I think that was kind of my mood when I eventually had the chance, because I heard this album was going to be so good. And I was like, oh, man, I've got to listen to this. Like, run into your room. Like, this is me for the next 40 minutes. I think, I was similar with you, that song, and then just being like, oh, who knows? But no, it's such a top quality record. So what was your third pick? Would you say this is your top pick?
Yeah. So as I said at the start, when you first came out with this whole notion, this was the one that sprung to my mind instantly. And you might notice as well at the start, I said it's been a great year for dance music and listed a few dance musicians, but didn't list these guys. So I thought I'd keep it as a surprise. So obviously dance clubs, nights out, festivals have kind of been something of a history textbook, this year, something we can only look back on. But for that context, for the best, in my opinion, the best dance record ever to be released, I think is incredible. So yeah, bold statement.
Big call.
So Guy and Howard Lawrence, they're a duo. They've been making music together for about 10 years, I think, officially. This is their third record. And yeah, it's so hard to describe just how good this record is. So the first record was kind of a bit ahead of its time. It was very groundbreaking, and this sort of sound that they brought, and it was a sound that was unique to them. And it was, so you kind of heard there was so many tracks on that record, whether that be Latch, whether that be Fire Starts to Burn, whether that be F for You, that you only needed to hear a little bit of it, and it was a Disclosure record, even though they were teaming up with all these people like Sam Smith and Eliza Doolittle, etc., you knew it was a Disclosure record. It just had this sound to it. And then the second record came around, and I think I'm not alone in saying that a lot of people were very disappointed with it. Not that it was bad, but it just didn't kind of have that same unique sort of sound to it. It didn't have sort of the big bangers as the first one did, you know, that would easily end a DJ set, or you know, on a club night out or something. And then I think the first thing I heard was they were releasing an EP, which was coming before the record. And the first thing they released from that was a song with Echo Roosevelt, who is an African musician, I believe, called Tondo.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that first drop when it kicks in, I was just like, what is this? Like, this is incredible. And it just kind of followed, and it seemed again that they've got this throughout this record, that sort of distinct sound to it, but it's different to the first record. Like it's their own unique sound, but a different one to the one they had in the first album. And it is literally just banger after banger after banger. The list of collaborations, like Khalees, Kalani, Khalid, all the cakes, Slow Tie, Channel Trey.
Everyone needs to have Slow Tie out as a feature at the moment.
yeah. Everyone loves having Slow Tie. Slow Tie did a track with James Blake recently as well, which is incredible. And it's just so kind of hard to, as I said, especially in a context that the record was released in a year where dance like clubs and festivals weren't a thing, so they weren't going to be going out and playing these songs in clubs or at festivals, etc. They are just for our ears and for the radio and whatever. And I felt like that has kind of fed my appetite in a way for going out, sort of like for the music side of it, because it is honestly some of the best dance music I've ever heard. And the whole record, it kind of is around this notion of energy. It's called Energy. So this is the second mention of energy, because obviously the past Salieu record Energy as well. But it focuses around the idea of this lyric which they had, and they teamed up with a guy called Eric Thomas, who is like a motivational speaker and podcaster, author.
Wow.
And he was sampled on When a Fire Starts to Burn. So it was his voice that was used for that sample, which is incredible. And so they teamed up with him again for this track Energy, and it was the specific line that he came out with, where your focus goes, your energy flows. And apparently when Guy and Howard heard that lyric, they knew that was the centerpiece of a project. They heard it and they were like, we're going to build this record around this. And kind of the sound that it had with the drums and the percussion, that is the sound which I was saying is kind of unique and running throughout, but still kind of individual to them, and done in a sort of a contemporary way, which still fits in, you know, with dance music, and it still has sort of the poppier elements to it, as well as the, you know, the real instrumental, like great instrumental parts as well. And I think as well, the kind of the sentiment of the record and that whole notion of energy, a lot of people have kind of realigned their motivations this year. They've realized what matters most to them in life. They've realized, I've been putting all this effort into work and this, when the real things that I get reward from are this, that, and the other. So I need to align my energy, align my focus. And that is exactly, you know, what the record is saying. So I think timing wise is great, in terms of the message. So in terms of favorite track, it's honestly impossible to pick. They're also sort of different, for kind of different reasons. Like My High with Slow Tie is incredible, and kind of has that more,
that one
is amazing, that rebellious sort of side of, you know, life, and, you know, don't get me down, don't and think like Watch Your Step with Khalees is incredible.
Such a classic Disclosure song, I found.
It I feel like it is. I feel like, definitely vocally, I guess that the kind of, it's less, that record is less percussion based than something like My High or Energy,
Yeah,
or
true, yeah.
you know. But I think it just, in a way, they kind of, to me, they all sound like Disclosure classics, even though like I was only hearing them for the first time. And that to me is why it stood out. I think it's really hard for dance records to be consistent.
Yeah.
For instance, like Frankie Wah, like I
Hmm.
said, huge track, Come Together, enormous track. But he released his album The Revival, Volume 1. It was okay, you know, there was standout moments like that. And there was a covered track that he had in there of You're Not Alone, which was really, really good. But as a collective, as a piece of music, as a album, as a collection of music, sorry, it just wasn't great. But this is just, I feel like, flawless from track one to track. Well, it depends, because if you add the EP onto it, it's like 16 tracks, but all
Okay. Yeah.
flawless, and then like VIP mixes and
Mhm.
remixes. It's incredible.
So I got one question. For me, the standout track was Duo Mali Mali. Like for me, like one big aspect is not only just live music, but music in general is a sense of coming together with a group of people. And I enjoy a good dance, enjoy a good boogie, but a lot of time with dance music, especially when I've walked through areas that are doing the dance music, I feel like I don't feel that sense of coming together and community spirit. But this song made me feel like I can. There was
Mm.
such a sense of spirit and togetherness in this song, which I absolutely loved. And my question to you is going to be, with dance music, do you think it can feel very individual based with, you're dancing to yourself, you're dancing away and stuff, instead of singing along. For you, do you think that's something that's come to mind in terms of dance music really has to kind of find a way of bringing people together, but still having that element of just making you want to dance on an individual perspective?
Mm. Well, you know that I said the best dance record, or the
Mm.
best dance tune of the year, is a track by Frankie Wah called "Come Together." You know, that is
Ah,
literally,
yeah, yeah,
that is the notion of it.
yeah.
But no, I see. And what you said about the one with Fatoumata Diawara, I hope I'm
Mm.
pronouncing that right. The irony in that is that's my favorite one to like sing along to, but I actually have no idea what she's saying or what's being said, because
Yeah.
it's in her native language.
Celebrating her home, like her heritage and country.
Mm,
I think that's what I read.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
kind of ironic. You don't understand what the lyrics are, despite it
yeah,
feeling such a unifying song.
yeah. And I guess kind of actually that's, I guess, a good way of putting it, because I think a lot of dance music people find as just quite soulless,
Mm.
quite I don't know, let's get drunk, let's go, lyrically soulless. Um, you know, maybe I did say how huge like Head and Heart is,
Mm.
but what is that apart from dum dum da dum 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 dum, so people might think that doesn't appeal to them, and they don't feel that feeling like you said, and then they don't feel like it's something they could sing with their friends or feel part of something. But then sometimes the music just kind of makes it, and the dance element of it. So like with Joel Corey, Emanike, lyrically it might not be an outstanding piece of
Mm.
songwriting, but as a song, as the production of it, and the way it's kind of put together, it's just an incredibly euphoric record. Similar
Yeah.
like with Dua Mali Mali, like I
Mm.
said, I don't know, like I don't even know what she's kind of saying, let alone what it means, but you just feel so lost in it and feel
Yeah.
like it, you
Yeah.
can have such a like euphoric moment in a festival field or in a club to that record. And I
Mm.
feel like that's um a big part of it, is how kind of the music makes you feel, because dance music isn't known, as I said, for its lyrical content. So I
Mm.
guess that sort of element of it isn't
Oh, cool.
it kind of cut out, I guess. That's because
Yeah.
you know a lot of like rock and roll music and whatever, people feel like, oh, the lyrics really really stand out to me, and that's not
Mhm.
the same with dance music. So the drive has to come from the production, from the how it
Yes.
makes you
Yeah.
feel. And
Mm.
actually a great example, that I don't know if you've heard of Bicep.
No, I haven't. No.
They are an incredible, I think they're a duo, I believe. And they create instrumental. A lot of their music is instrumental, but their
Mm.
chord progressions just make you want to cry. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember the first time I heard, it was Animac on Radio One said that, and I was like, "You what? You know, how could that work?" And you
Mm.
listen to it, and it is just this. The even though there are no lyrics, there's no lyrical content to the track. It's so hard to describe it. Just the way it makes you feel, the way
Yeah.
it kind of tackles your brain is incredible. And I think maybe that's what kind of drew me to a lot of the Disclosure record, because I think there is an element of there of good lyrical content as well as just incredible dance music.
Hmm. Yeah. No, it's probably one of my favorite dance records of the year for sure. Yeah, it's really strong. Watch You Step. Lavender was one that I really liked as well. Hip hop and a little disco kind of
Hmm.
vibe.
Yeah, and even like Channel Trey says to, like in there, like, would you ever think Trey doing something like this? And
Yeah.
because it's kind of that overlap of the hip hop world and the dance world is something that should be maybe looked into a little bit more. So what was your third and final?
My final, it's not my favorite record of the year. I haven't done it in any order. But I'm going for a record that I just listen to these songs again and again and again and again. But it is quite a controversial thing to say. You know, if you're going to pick your favorite 3 records of the year, I think this is quite a controversial one to say. Notes on a Conditional Form by the 1975.
Ooh.
Yes, the mess of the Music for Cars era thing hindered, I think, how this record is perceived. Matty talking too much as ever. The load of singles being released just didn't keep anything left over to that level that we heard before the release. There's 7 or 8 singles, and for me, all those singles are either truly brilliant or, at worst, very good. So if you've got 7 or 8 singles that are at that standard, there's something good going about this record.
Mm.
And another thing for me that stood out for Notes on a Conditional Form was, up until this record, one little minor thing I had with the 1975 is they always, when they went a bit left field, something a bit different away from the typical sound that they have, it always felt like they were imitating it, not making it their own. And this record, I feel like when they do touch on genres that you don't expect them to do it, they stamp on it and just put a very good take on it. And this is our own interpretation instead of just imitating it. And I think that's one of the success stories of Notes. So yeah, that's what for me. Those are the 2 things that I will say when defending, when people talk about this record being potentially a disappointment. On a personal level, I totally understand that, but I think there is a lot of good things with this record. And as we all know, the start of it with Greta Thunberg doing that powerful piece, it's just an incredible bit of art to have on streaming platforms and on a record. It just spaces you out afterwards, and you just go, whoa. It really hits you, and then all of a sudden we get that drum beat into the big rock song that is People. Despite its mania and just pure wackiness, it's a really hot song from a guitar purpose. It has a
Mm.
stoner rock element within the guitars and the verses, which Adam Hand does incredibly well. It's that groove, that drive is very, you could even say Queens of the Stone Age, because it's quite hard not to ignore that link when you say stoner rock. Matty's vocals are so panicky, the lyrics are all over the place, and it just summed up that period of time of abortion laws coming across, Australia on fire, elections and things like that. It just really grabbed that tone. And you even had like bands like Green Day saying, hey, this is one of my favorite rock songs I've heard for a while. And yeah, that groove in the verses just gets me every time. And then you've got things like Birthday Party is such a beautiful piece of production by George. It's outstanding. It's a bit waffles on a bit, but I think it's purely beautiful. And the instrumental track streaming that goes in before it, I think is so lovely. Then Me and You Together song is just pure delight, isn't it?
Mhm. It's
Shoegazy with like
busted on drugs.
busted on drugs. It's awesome and cute.
Yeah.
And I love it when the band do something ironic with Love Me and all that kind of stuff. But I think when the 1975 are at their most sincere, I think even the people that really struggle with them could turn around and say, nah, this is actually pretty good. And I've definitely heard that with Me and You Together song. And, you know, all so far I've been talking about singles. And like I said, one of the issues is we probably heard the best bits of the record before it came out. But there's still some shining moments that we heard for the first time. Tonight, I Wish I Was Your Boy is a great deep cut. I like the beat. I like the mixing. And I think the melody and the harmonies, I don't know, it just reminds me of like the Temptations, that kind of, you know, 4-piece harmony kind of thing. It's really, really good. I love the melody to it. And then going into more of that controversial territory, I think Shiny Collarbone is actually really good. I think it's supposed to be a bit of a piss take. It's supposed to take the mick. It was all George Daniel production, and the sample from Cutty Ranks, he actually redid it, re-recorded it for the band, which I thought was kind of cool. And then obviously the big single of Doom Shad Det Minot, as I like to call it, because that's what it sounds like. But, yeah, we all know what a great pop single it was. It broke into mainstream radio properly onto like Capital FM.
Yeah.
Which I thought was such a big moment. I know both of us, we heard it live before it came out, and everyone was like, we need to hear it properly.
Yeah.
You know, the amateur videos on like 100K views because people loved it. And it came out and it just felt like you were part of something special, of a band at the top of their game. It really felt like a big moment, and it was so cool to witness it live and follow that path. And then I think the album finishes off so purely and lovely, which kind of fits in with that narrative that it's kind of end of some sort of era for the 1975 with Don't Worry, which was written by Tim Healy, Matt Healy's dad, and then Guys, which is Matty being probably at his most sincere again, talking about his relationship with the other band members. Overall, I think if this song was 16 tracks or 17 tracks, it would be album of the year.
Really?
I think there's 5 songs that really do let it down, which I do understand where people do struggle with. But focusing on they've successfully able to do things differently and have so many popular singles. The acoustic tracks as well are really solid as well. And yeah, my favorite track, and I think it really resonates with us with 2020, is Frail State of Mind. It's my favorite song. It's a UK garage song with a trap beat. And I think previously when they've attempted those kind of things, like I said, it's an imitation, but they made it their own. They did it to a high standard. It you know, I'm not a UK garage connoisseur, but I feel like if you played them that kind of song, they'd go, no, that's actually pretty good. Lyrics as well, I think, are brilliantly. I think it's one of Matty's strongest lyrics ever. The way it finishes with, I'll just read it. I haven't told a lie in quite some time. You know we'll leave if you keep lying. Don't lie behind your frail state of mind. The whole song tackles on your fragility of your mental state, social anxiety and things like that. And Matty is at his most honest with himself, and I think as a culture and a society we're dealing with mental health, you know, that sense of we need to support people and treat mental health as a proper illness and support it and give it enough funding that we look after people, but in the sense of dealing with it in an honest and upfront way of how to cope with struggling with mental health. I don't know about yourself, but when I've struggled with it, is being that brutally honest aspect of myself always plays a big key with dealing with it. And I think that last verse, that last bit of the song, really tackles on I think quite a sensitive thing with talking about mental health, where, you know, you want to support and look after people. People can't take the mick and abuse that to get, you know, to lie. So it's a very honest song, and I think they really capture a great tone and do something really unique with it.
Yeah. One of my biggest sort of, I don't want to say bugbears, because I love this band beyond like, I love them so much, but a lot of a common sort of critique of them is that it is great how they do have all these, and I think it kind of touches on actually, like you were saying about how it feels like they're imitating. It's almost as though it's a bit contrived.
Yeah,
Let's make a record. We're going to put let's do a punk song to start, and then let's have like a really beautiful sort of teenage girl romance song, and then let's try this garage thing and see what that's about. And then, do you know, like, personally to me, it all seems natural. Do you feel the same, that it was a sort of a natural?
And I think it feels more natural in previous records. It feels more complete together. despite, like I said, maybe probably doesn't reach to a standard of moments on this record. But I totally understand where, is it for the sake of it? Is it too ego driven? Is it too self-centered? But this record, I feel like, is supposed to be, in a way. So yeah, I definitely know where you're coming from and understand why people struggle with that, especially if they are really into these genres that they do try and tackle. I fully understand that. And looking in terms of picking your influences, you look at a song like "Love Me," very Duran Duran. They do the 3-part harmonies, but to such a good standard. You're like, fair play. They imitate Duran Duran really, really well. It makes it feel like it's their own thing. So yeah, there's a fine line, isn't there, with that?
Yeah, and they even have the gospel track, like "If I Believe" on the second record. Like that is, I just think that is incredible. But again, I just worry that a lot of people, kind of see it as contrived and trying to stand out and go, look, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this. But I feel personally, it just kind of comes across as natural. So on the second record, there's sort of that. There's kind of in the middle. There's this part where it's kind of can't work out how it decides whether it wants to kind of be interlude or songy. There's like where it has like "Lost My Head," it's "My Brain" and things like that, and they're actually like my favorite moments in that album, because I don't know, they're just the way, like I was saying earlier about the dance music, even though they are sort of interlude, the chord progressions and the synths and the kind of the darkness of it just kind of make you really feel something. And that I felt was kind of lacking a little bit from the interludes and those little pieces in this record.
I think it's done in a very different way. It really tackles more of a classical approach that you could imagine them recording in Abbey Road Studios, and then something where you feel like they're in like their teenage rooms doing it on GarageBand or something. I feel like it is done in a very, very different way. I think because they love Brian Eno so much, it's going to be very hard for them to escape that love for, let's say, ambient music. Who knows what they got planned next? Like you said earlier, what do you think could happen next with certain artists? I feel like with the 1975, you have no idea. It's a hard one. I don't go back to a lot of the instrumental ambient stuff a lot. That's why probably Brief Inquiry is probably my favorite. Probably doesn't do that as much. It's a hard one to say if they're going to ditch that or not. Are they really going to return to more of a guitar-y roots bit of what they were like with Drive Like I Do or not? You just don't know what to predict, and I don't think even Matty and Co know.
I mean, that's, to be honest, but we don't want to know. That's the exciting thing of being a fan of the 1975 and of music. Really. You don't
definitely. And that's going to be 2021. Who's going to drop records? We all hope if it's going to be Arctic Monkeys or Kendrick Lamar, etc. You really don't know. What things for 2021 are you looking forward to?
Nice segue. So you mentioned there Kendrick Lamar. I think there's two artists that I'm hoping will drop records next year: Kendrick Lamar and Lorde.
Of course. She's been recording in New York, apparently.
I feel like that could be done. Music for 2021 can be done if those two artists release music. I feel like a lot of people have kind of had this expectancy around Kendrick Lamar. I feel because a lot of his songs are obviously kind of social commentaries on Black Lives Matter and race issues within America, and this year has been incredibly prominent for that, and when it's brought to the forefront. But I guess I feel like it's very, very hard for me to judge an artist for singing about things like that, but sometimes I think there were certain tracks that were released by certain artists this year that didn't kind of hit, even though they were about very strong and powerful things. I
get that.
Didn't feel they hit, and then others did. For instance, the Pharrell and Jay-Z track "Entrepreneur." I know you weren't a huge fan.
No, but you understand the impact and what it people.
Exactly. And I feel like maybe that's why Kendrick, not that I'm inside Kendrick Lamar's brain, but why maybe he veered away from that and didn't want to kind of do the token, here's a song
he already has music that aligns with what's happening at the moment.
Exactly.
When Black Lives Matter, for example, arrived on the scene in 2014, All Right was basically
the anthem.
The whole To Pimp a Butterfly record is for me a fantastic piece of art that
Oh yeah,
Dives deep into, we could go on for hours about that.
yeah,
So yeah, if you've written, that's one of the issues about, let's say the current climate, is that it's repeating itself again and again and again, and we're still not getting anywhere with it.
yeah,
I'm guessing maybe someone like him may feel that as well. It's like, I've done that record.
yeah, yeah. He's the
Probably.
trendsetter. You know, he doesn't. He's not. This is
Yeah.
like you said, is stuff that he's done. And yeah, Lord would be, yeah, just again, I don't know that. It's just that dark pop is it's just addictive. Like I love it
Constantly
so much.
beautiful and so subtle,
Mm,
um, and courageous at the same time. I've got
mm,
so much respect to it. Liability was one of the best songs of that year when it came out.
yeah,
It's one of the few songs that I've listened to and just bawled my eyes out. And
yeah,
then the next person I saw that I knew liked Lord, I said, "Have you listened to Liability?" And we just both hugged each other.
yeah.
We both
That's
knew
sweet.
that it
That's
wasn't it.
sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Other records I mentioned earlier, Arlo Parks.
Mhm.
You know that is the only thing that's kind of, because she's not released an actual album this year. For me, song of the year toss up between Fontaines DC Hero's Death and Arlo Parks Black Dog.
Yeah.
But for the things I've heard from her record Collapse in Sunbeams so far, it sounds like it's going to be very, very good. So I cannot wait for that.
Mhm.
Tom Grennan as well. I'm
Yeah.
really excited for his. I feel like he was kind of, and again, I was very lucky to chat to Tom, and what really interested me, and I really surprised me, is how he kind of disregarded his first record. He said, although I'm incredibly grateful for it and the places that it's got me,
Interesting.
he was like, I feel like this is my debut. This is really me, you know. And
It
so for
sounds a bit
someone,
more quirky as well, which I thought was quite
mm,
cool. Some singles.
yeah, and for someone to say that, I feel is that's like a bold, strong statement. So I'm really kind of excited to hear that.
Yeah.
Um, and what I alluded to earlier as well about dance music, like teaming up with like hip hop and different genres. SG Lewis is dropping his debut record. He's been making music and producing music for a long time,
Mhm.
but he is actually kind of releasing a record under his name, and the
Yeah.
songs we've heard so far are incredible, like so feel good. Like he dropped Run with, is it with Rye, I believe, like called Time, like last week, and it's very like Tame Impala sort of vibes. And then there's like when he had like Chemicals, which came out in the summer. What a tune that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the track he's got at the moment, Lucky Day. There's that's just, I think, a really promising record that sort of is going to push different kind of sonic
Interesting.
boundaries, which that I'm really, really excited for. But what about you? What's got you excited for 2021?
Curious to see what, like you said, Arctic Monkeys. I know for a fact Alex Turner will just follow the pursuit of his creativity, which always is so insightful and interesting. I think I'll always be curious, no matter what turn they take. Queens of the Stone Age. I hope they've got some new music coming out. Their previous record was probably one of their weakest, which just felt a bit surprising by them. And they're such a great, tight, good quality band. One of the best performing bands I've ever seen live. Um, so yeah, be curious to see. They're headlining potentially Reading next year if it's on. Um, so yeah, that will be interesting to see. I really hope Stella Donnelly has some new music coming out. The Aussie singer-songwriter that, social political issues, writes so beautifully, and so well. I've absolutely, I walked out of her gig a couple of years ago, and feeling so wholesome and positive about life. And then I was fortunate enough to see her in Australia, in her home country. Her boldness and ballsiness came out a lot more, which was quite
Mm.
fun. Who else? Jake Bugg, obviously under a new label, building up to a new record. So there's been some really good singles there. I always have a soft spot for him. Be great to see what he's got next, and having a more solid backing this time around. I feel like, potentially his Mercury were potentially letting him down, or there was a bit of a fallout. I don't really know.
Mm.
So yeah, fingers crossed to see what happens with him. And then going even smaller, I'm going to go with the band from Manchester, Roller. They've got their
Mm.
second single coming out at the start of next year, which, their debut single Thinking of Tomorrow was epic. So Manchester. Yeah, I'd be curious to see where that band end up. They've got a lot of talent.
Yeah, and as I said at the start about bands like that, there is going to be this sort of backlog of music from all these bands that haven't been able to record properly or get their music heard properly, who are going to have some absolute belters and absolute like gems of tracks just in their locker, but they've just not been able to share it in the normal way and via, like,
Yeah.
I don't know, support slots or playing live, or
Mm.
because they've not had the opportunity, and labels' budgets have been limited, so they've had to focus on the artists they have on their rosters already.
Mhm.
So there will be, I hope, this kind of surge in this sort of emerging talent. So yeah, definitely excited for that.
Hopefully we see some good enjoyment of gigs and concerts again in 2021. Fingers crossed. This has honestly been such a joy. Like I said earlier, it's been great this year. You talk about silver linings of 2020, getting to know yourself and doing stuff with you. It's been such a joy. And as everyone can tell, we could probably talk for hours about
Yeah,
music together.
yeah,
But yeah, this has been honestly such a blast getting to know you and talking about music. And there's been some great pieces of music being spoke about in the last however long this is.
yeah.
It's been such a joy. Any last words for you, Matt?
No, just thank you. And I think what's great is just kind of, I feel like we share the same motivations, in the way that I know that millions of people don't watch your page or listen to my radio show.
Mm.
But if one person discovers a new favorite song, a new favorite band, or whatever, that is priceless. And so by
Definitely.
doing things like this and talking about things, hopefully it will get people to listen to things they wouldn't maybe have thought of listening to, or discover new things, or maybe just reignite a love. For instance, I want to go listen to the 1975 album now. I've not listened to that for a few weeks, so I want to
Yeah,
listen back to it. And just kind of, thank you for inviting me to be a part of it, because
it's been
I think it is a pretty special thing.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, and I totally agree with what you're doing and what you're doing on the radio and things like that. That pursuit for just that purity of engagement,
Mm.
of if at least one person enjoys it and messages you, or not even messages you, you'll never know that someone may catch what you recommend or just say or speak about with an artist. It could all of a sudden resonate with them and transform their life if you're really going to go bold and big with that. There's such a purity. And also I want to say, it's been so lovely getting loads of people saying thank you for doing the page and the stuff that we do. But I just want to say a massive thank you to all of them for making 2020 more bearable. It truly means a lot, and that's you included, and everyone else that's been involved with the page. It's it really means a lot, and it'll be exciting to see when normal life comes back, what could happen. You don't know what's around the corner.
Amazing.
Brilliant.